The Tennessee State Capitol building in downtown Nashville is an impressive monolithic structure. Constructed in a Greek Revival architectural style, it is a shrine to democracy with a nod to the ancient society who gave rise to our modern form of government. The location of the state's capital was not always in Nashville. In fact, Tennessee has had a total of 4 different cities claim the title of state capital. The capital was initially in Knoxville, then it moved to Kingston for a single day, and then it became Nashville, but not permanently. Murfreesboro was also the capital for a time until it was advocated for by then-Governor James Jones that the capital should move back to Nashville. It was decided by the state's General Assembly in 1843 that Nashville would be the permanent location for the state's capital. But why Nashville? There were some strong factors that came into consideration when making this decision. It was understood, given Tennessee's rectangular geographic boundaries, that the capital should be located somewhere in Middle Tennessee, so this narrowed it down to Nashville or Murfreesboro. Nashville's economy has always been centered around agriculture and commerce, so much so that it's become the state's motto and can even be found on the Great Seal of Tennessee. The commerce part only works if farmers have a way to export their goods, and Nashville has what Murfreesboro does not: a navigable river. The Cumberland River is a tributary of the Mississippi River, which flows to the flourishing port city of New Orleans. But of course, everyone even then already knew that, and that alone wasn't enough to seal the deal. It turns out that even then, one thing has always been true: money talks, and there is no better price than free. The deciding factor that convinced the state legislature to adopt Nashville as the capital was that a plot of land on the tallest hill along the Cumberland River had already been purchased by Nashville's mayor, Powhatan Maxey. He then in turn gifted the land to the state for free on the condition that the land be used as a site for the future Tennessee State Capitol building. Before you can build a building, you're going to need an architect. And in 1845, the Building Commission tasked with the construction of the Capitol building had selected William Strickland as the man for the job. Strickland had studied under another famous architect by the name of Benjamin Latrobe, who was the architect who designed many of the buildings that comprise the skyline of Washington, D.C. Strickland was also the architect who designed the tower on top of Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Strickland estimated that construction of the Capitol building would take between 3 to 5 years and cost about $350,000. He was clearly an ambitious man, and, consistent with every government infrastructure project, he went over time and over budget. Construction ended up lasting 14 years and cost $880,000, nearly 2.5 times the quoted amount. The construction took so long that Strickland would not even live to see its completion. After Strickland's death, oversight of the project was assumed by Samuel Morgan, who was a chairman of the Building Commission and a member of the committee that selected Strickland. Morgan was also the only member of the committee who worked through the entire duration of the 14-year construction process. In 1845, ground broke as the first steps of construction were taken. 4 feet of the crest of the hill had to be excavated to create a level surface on which to lay the 7-foot-thick limestone foundation. On top of the foundation rest the upper walls of the building, which are comprised of 4.5-foot-thick limestone blocks. The limestone used in construction was quarried less than a mile away from the Capitol at Samuel Watkins Quarry on modern-day Charlotte Ave. The stones were carved by inmates from the state penitentiary, as well as by slaves, who had been hired out by their master to the state government. The stones were carved so precisely that the average mortar joints are less than 3/16 of an inch thick. The 80-foot stone tower that soars above the copper roof of the building is made of individual 10-ton stone blocks that were lifted 100 feet in the air via the use of rope and pulleys. The iron finial crowning the tower is manufactured in Nashville and weighs 10 tons itself. The combined weight of the tower is about 4,000 tons and is supported by grand vertical columns just outside of the house chamber. Surprisingly, there are no known fatalities that occurred during construction. The hill upon which the Capitol building was erected rises 200 feet above the Cumberland River, and with the tower of the Capitol rising an additional 200 feet, the Tennessee State Capitol building would be the tallest feature on the Nashville skyline for 99 years. Remember Strickland and Morgan? They're still here. Literally. Both of these men are buried within the walls of the Capitol, in the northeast and southeast corners respectively. And they're not alone. James K. Polk, a Tennessee native and the 11th President of the United States, along with his wife Sarah, are also buried on the Capitol grounds. This makes the Tennessee State Capitol a one-of-a-kind. the only state capital to have people entombed within the walls, and the only one with a presidential burial site. The weight of tens of thousands of tons of stone are supported by load-bearing stone piers, buttresses, and vaulted crypt ceilings. 2 of the 3 branches of government are still operating out of the Capitol building, making it one of the few historic working capitals in the country. On the first floor is the governor's office, which was remodeled in the 1930s. This is where Tennessee's 50th governor, Bill Lee, carries out his daily duties. Due to the office still being a functional work area, access by visitors is typically not permitted within the actual office space. The state Supreme Court was within the walls of the Capitol building from the 1850s until the 1930s, when the current Supreme Court building was constructed across the street. As the state grew, so did the Justice Department's need for more space. In the 1930s, the room was remodeled and walls were erected to divide the area into individual offices. But in the 1980s, a restoration committee was formed to restore the courtroom to its former glory. While the room no longer accommodates judicial proceedings, the space is now used to host events and press conferences, and the governor will occasionally use it when holding bill signing ceremonies. You probably already know that the U.S. Supreme Court traditionally has 9 justices. What you probably did not know is that Tennessee's Supreme Court only has 5. It's still an odd number, and that's all that really matters. Before we go upstairs, do you see that big chip on the marble railing? Rumor has it that that resulted from a heated debate over abolition. Story goes that a pro-slavery legislator really got into it with another elected official, so much so that he fired a gun at him, instead striking the railing. It's a physical reminder of the brutal nature inherent in those who believed that they had a right to enslave others. Moving up to the second floor, the breathtaking grandeur of the architecture is surprisingly impressive. The walls climb 40 feet into the air to meet the beautiful vaulted ceilings, which suspend a massive chandelier. As I mentioned earlier, those massive columns are the supports for the tower above the building. Passing between the columns, we enter into the House of Representatives, which in Tennessee is called the General Assembly, and it's comprised of 99 representatives from across the state. The representatives are not set in according to political party, but instead are mixed together. This is done intentionally to encourage discussion and debate. There are viewing galleries on either side of the room in which any member of the public is allowed access to view the legislative sessions. All sessions are also recorded as well as available online via live stream. Everything within the state government is intentionally kept open to the public for the sake of transparency and accountability. Once a bill passes a vote in the General Assembly, it moves down the hall to the Senate to be voted upon there. The Senate is noticeably smaller, consisting of 33 seats, exactly 1/3 the size of the General Assembly. Here, senators are sat along party lines, with the center aisle as the demarcation. Every 2 years, a new speaker is elected by the Senate from among their own ranks. And specific to Tennessee, the speaker also fulfills the role of the lieutenant governor. As is the case in the General Assembly, there is also a second-floor viewing gallery in the Senate which is open to the public. The Legislative Lounge was the original Tennessee State Library until the larger state library was constructed across the street in the 1950s. The space is now primarily used for private events, although it as well as other areas of the Capitol are currently undergoing renovation and restoration. Construction on the Capitol had only just finished when the country found itself emblazoned in a bitter civil war. Sadly, Tennessee found itself within the Confederacy, but 1 year into the war, Union soldiers had captured Nashville following the evacuation of Confederate troops, making Tennessee's Capitol building the first state house to fall to the Union. The building was used as a hospital following the Battle of Stones River and Murfreesboro, and it was also a barracks and even served as an actual fortress, Fort Andrew Johnson. The Union fortified the hill with walls made of cedar logs and emplaced 15 cannons around the fort to repel an anticipated Confederate attack. In December of 1864, during the Battle of Nashville, Governor Andrew Johnson observed the fighting from the high vantage point of the building's tower and gave the order to blow up the building should the city fall to the hands of the Confederacy. In conclusion, the Tennessee State Capitol building has a bit of a complicated history with a few blemishes on its record. As is the case with much of our nation's history, we're not perfect, and studying our flaws and what has led to them has the potential to open the door for a better future for our nation as well as its people.